You're listening to the Dale Wetzel Radio Show, a man who's covered North Dakota news for 3 decades. Call Dale with your questions at 800-228-0550 or 258-0550 or email kfyr@clearchannel.com. Here again, Dale Wetzel.
We're speaking to Dustin Gawrylow. He's the director of the North Dakota Watchdog Network, and he is interested in something called the Western Area Water Supply System. This was set up by the legislature a few years ago, and the initial idea was to essentially set up a water supply network for western North Dakota, where water is in high demand because of the oil boom, and you would supply water to rural communities that don't presently have water from Lake Sakakawea, and you would finance it by selling industrial water to oil companies that need it for hydraulic fracturing. And Mr. Gawrylow refers to this as Republican Party socialism, and he says it has the potential to become a $250 million boondoggle. And I thought it would be interesting to have him on and talk about those conclusions. Dustin, what is the problem, in your opinion, with the Western Area Water Supply System?
Well, the problem with it is, and we call it WAS for short, is threefold. One is that the original idea to finance this project to get water to communities and farmers and individuals by selling industrial water was fine, but the trouble is there was already people doing that. The private sector, the private landowners were already providing that service to the oil industry for fracking, and they were doing it at a market rate. What has happened is this program has suffered what is commonly referred to as mission creep. It went from being they were going to sell excess water on the side to that has pretty much become their primary business. And it has done that because they've set up a loan structure with the Bank of North Dakota and loans through the State Water Commission that require them to have so much revenue generated. And as a result, they have to focus more on the industrial side of this project than the public service side of the project. Because
that's where the money is and they have a loan to pay.
Right, right. And so what's happened is that they get most of their water from the Missouri River through Williston's water permit, which means that the water that goes in the WAS is primarily treated water from the Williston water treatment plant, which, as many people know, has been suffering from huge strain. And you know, it really is an issue of who's paying the bill. So initially you've got the state government setting up this project, funding it with loans and grants, and then when they sell their industrial water that it comes through the Williston water treatment plant, they are selling it at a rate that is lower than the market was charging prior to WA's existence. And so you've got a driver down that is driving down the market price for water. It is setting prices for private water providers. And on top of that, the question is WAS paying Williston enough for that water to compensate for that new demand and new strain on its infrastructure? WAS pays Williston $3.65 per 1,000 gallons of water on their supply side, and then they sell it on the retail side for $20 per 1,000 gallons.
So they mark it up more than 6 times.
Right, they do. And the trouble is we don't know, and we're trying to track down whether that price that the WAS program is paying Williston is not only covering the costs, but making Williston's involvement in WAS worth it to the people of Williston, because we've seen their bonding of this expansion of the water treatment plant was a problem, because Williston has gone in debt doing these infrastructure projects. And so over half, or almost half of the demand from the water treatment plant, from the Williston water infrastructure, has become industrial water. That demand was not there 4 years ago. And so anybody who is in Williston should be asking their city leaders, are we getting our money's worth, or are we as citizens of Williston subsidizing this program to give cheap water, to sell cheap water to big oil?
What is the obstacle for the city of Williston to just jack up the price that they sell industrial water for?
Well, the city of Williston is a member of WAS. WAS is a consortium, basically, and so they are on the board, and I suppose it creates a little bit of a difficulty in being able to have some leverage when they're part of the governing council. There's always this idea, and we see it in higher ed quite often, where, the management says, oh, we got all this extra capacity. Well, when it started, they did have extra capacity. Now they don't. Now they have to add capacity. So there's a problem with the management of this program because so much water is being pushed through the Williston water treatment and water infrastructure system into WAS, and we don't know whether the value to the people of Williston is there. Because not only that, we also know that water bills in Williston will be going up. So not only are there property taxes and special assessments going up to bond for these projects, but their day-to-day water bills to pay for those specials are going up as well.
I'm a little unclear as to why is it that the Western Area Water Supply Project has to take its water from Williston? Couldn't they take it from some other supplier?
It's because it takes years and years to get a permit. And having talked with folks at the State Water Commission for several hours on this issue, if WAS had wanted to get a water permit, it would probably have taken until about now to get that permit. It sometimes can take 2 years for that process to go through, especially at the demand level that WAS needs. Now, the interesting thing is we've been seeing all of these stories about how much water is needed for fracking, and the fact is that the permits are already there. There's less than 40% of the water that has been permitted is actually being pulled out of the ground. There's more than enough permits out there in the private sector to deal with this demand by the oil industry. By creating this subsidized program called WAS, the state has actually impeded private industry's ability to develop its own supply system.
How well has the Western Area Water Supply Project done in supplying water to communities that did not have Missouri River water before?
They've done well enough to, be out there touting what they've done, but as a percentage of the project, they basically sold that as the primary purpose of this project originally to the legislature, and it is easily a minority faction of the project at this point. The primary purpose of this has become to supply water not only at the depots, but also connecting direct lines out to regional uptake facilities for the oil companies themselves. So we've got a state project that is literally building infrastructure to private oil company distribution centers when private industry wants to do that.
What sort of advantages does, the Western Area Water Supply Project, when they want to do a pipeline, a sort of direct pipeline that you're talking about, they want to build a pipeline to a particular oil drilling location, do they have advantages that a private company would not have if it wanted to do the same thing?
Oh, they absolutely do, because they have the power of the state and the power of local water districts, and that is eminent domain. They are able to fast-track siting and right-of-way issues with the state and with private landowners that are, obstinate to the project going through. And, a private company would have to pay a much higher rate to get those right-of-ways with private landowners, whereas because this is considered an infrastructure project, it is fast-tracked under North Dakota law.
Do you think that it's fair to call this a boondoggle? I guess I associate the word boondoggle with something that's inherently wasteful, but as I get what your beef is about this project is that you have a state-funded entity that is undercutting water prices for private industry, and maybe it isn't serving communities with water to the extent that it originally thought it would, but it doesn't appear to be a wasteful project. It just appears to be, frankly, government-subsidized competition with private industry.
Well, it is a boondoggle because this is a purpose and a function that private industry is doing and wants to do. Government should only do what private industry can't do or does not want to do. We've got plenty of other areas where private industry is struggling to catch up on infrastructure needs. We have plenty of other areas where state money could be put towards real infrastructure. And to put state money into this sort of a project that competes with the private industry and actually is changing the dynamics of private industry, is a boondoggle, because state taxpayers who are in the business should not be paying tax to subsidize their own competition.
Let's just follow up on that for a moment. How is the taxpayer of North Dakota, in your judgment, being hurt by this? I mean, we talked about loans. I think that the loans are being paid. What's the problem?
The loans are being paid, but just barely, and that is based on the low price. We believe that if the WAS project was paying Williston a proper amount for that water, that their entire business plan would collapse, and they would not be able to meet their loan obligations.
So is this the reason why the city of Williston isn't raising the price?
Right, because there is obviously there's going to be some collusion, because Williston's part of the consortium. What we need to do is we need to look at who is getting the cost, who's paying the cost, and who's getting the benefit. And if local residents are getting a higher cost from a state-funded project, we've got a problem.
We're speaking to Dustin Gawrylow. He's the director of the North Dakota Watchdog Network. He has a email newsletter and a website, and one of the things on his website right now is a story about the Western Area Water Supply Project, which is a project that supplies water to rural communities in western North Dakota and also to the oil industry. Mr. Gawrylow argues that this is a boondoggle because it is primarily undercutting private industry's efforts to supply water to the oil industry. We'll be back in a moment.
Fisher Sand and Gravel, a 60-year-old locally owned company, is hiring career-oriented equipment operators for portable crushing operations. Competitive wages and benefits. Apply online at FisherIND.com or at 3020 Energy Drive, Dickinson. Fisher Sand and Gravel, EOE.
The iHeartRadio app versus a dog. Know the facts. Dogs need to be fed, but the iHeartRadio app feeds you your favorite stations wherever you are. Dogs lick their butt. The iHeartRadio app kicks butt by letting you build playlists from 18 million songs, and it will never piddle on your carpet. Millions of songs, thousands of stations, one free app. iHeartRadio is that easy. Download the upgraded app with a new look and improved search, or listen online at iHeartRadio.com.
We're going shopping.
Go shopping and spend a fragment of what you normally would with the K-Fire sale every Tuesday. You'll find different items from several local merchants every week. Go to the K-Fire sale link at KFYR.com.
Where the greatest hits ever are still playing. Saturday night at the Oldies with Todd Mitchell.
Love me tender, love me sweet.
Saturday night at the Oldies with Todd Mitchell, beginning at 6, here on K-Fire.
Friday morning on PMS, we played Name That Horribly Electronically Altered Grand Funk Railroad song to see Grand Funk at Prairie Nights.
Some Kind of Wonderful.
Some
Wow.
Kind of Wonderful.
You got it.
So what version of that song do you like better? This one?
I like yours better.
You like the electronically altered one better?
Yes, it's just more up to date.
PMS mornings on K-Fire.
Every Saturday, it's the Dale Wetzel Show on the voice of the Northern Plains, KFYR, on AM 1100, The Flag, WCFG in Fargo, Moorhead, and KTGO 1090 Radio, The Flag, talk radio in the Bakken. Here's your host, Dale Wetzel.
We're speaking to Dustin Gawrylow. He's the director of the North Dakota Watchdog Network. And Mr. Gawrylow, what is the North Dakota Watchdog Network?
Well, the North Dakota Watchdog Network is a 501c3 organization that keeps an eye on state and local government primarily, and helps citizens keep up to date with what's going on in their area, and helps educate folks on various issues, and just kind of keeps an eye on politicians and keeping them honest.
You mentioned you're a 501c3. and I notice you don't have the term Tea Party involved in your name. How tough was it for you to become a 501c3, which means that if I give you money, I can deduct it from my taxes?
Well, it took 19 months from the time that we filed the paperwork till we heard one word back from the IRS, and then from that point it took about 3.5 months to do some back and forth. They certainly looked at all of our material, and that is one of the differences. I've been told that a lot of the organizations that were having trouble had no history. And when we filed our paperwork, we decided we were going to operate as if we did get our 501c3 to create a track record that the IRS could look at and determine whether we are doing okay or not as far as their terms require. To do what we do, we didn't need to be 501c3, but it certainly is a benefit to our supporters. And so what we did was just kind of operated as we would, and the IRS had some questions about our material, but at the end of the day, they were willing to give us our authorization.
How much money is involved in this Western Area Water Supply Project? How much money was anticipated to be spent on this when it began, and how much money does it expect to spend once it's finished, if it ever is?
Well, originally the original bill in 2011 to authorize the project, I believe it was around $110 million. After the 2013 session, there's been over $239 million dedicated to it. It is projected to be somewhere north of $350 million by the end of next session, with even more coming down the line. And that just shows the mission creep that I think that's a mission gallop, isn't it? Yeah. It's very quick, and obviously, at the end of the day, even though these are loans for the Bank of North Dakota, at the end of the day, the North Dakota taxpayers are on the hook because the state legislature authorized this project, guaranteed those loans through the state bank. So when we could use the term too big to fail right now. This project is too big to fail for the legislators that supported it, and I believe a lot of legislators that supported this were hoodwinked. They were sold a bill of goods, and it's gone way beyond that point because there is a management consortium in this project that wants to expand and create a little empire out in western North Dakota that controls industrial water. And part of that, trouble is out in District 39, where you've got one of the lead managers and directors of the Western Area Water Supply running for the state legislature. So not only does he want to create this program and this project that is bilking the taxpayers to subsidize the oil industry, now he also wants to be a legislator and be part of the decision-making process.
I'm interested in the term hoodwinked because frankly, it wasn't this entirely foreseeable. I mean, you mentioned legislators were hoodwinked. When this first came down the pike, wasn't this sort of expansion, this sort of mission gallop or mission creep or whatever you want to call it, wasn't it entirely foreseeable?
I think that
in other words, they weren't hoodwinked, they were willfully blind.
Yeah, I think that's probably more accurate. And the fact is that this was sold as a public service. It was sold with a self-financing mechanism, and that self-financing mechanism, they did not, connect the dots on the ramifications to the general public and to the industry. And what we have now is, arguably the largest expansion of state-owned and operated industry, private industry, since the state mill and elevator. And there's simply, these are the same legislators that said, oh, no, we would never get involved in a state-owned refinery, we would never get involved in a state-owned pipeline, and now we've got state-owned industrial water. And the question is, how do we nip this in the bud? Ultimately, the solution is to separate the public service, the providing water to residents, providing water to farms, from the industrial function. Taking that industrial function away, the state should fund the public service portion of it. That's genuine infrastructure. There's no dispute as far as the state's obligation there. On the industrial side, there's going to have to be discussion as to what we do with that. And frankly, it should be there should be a mechanism to figure out how to equitably divest the state in the industrial function.
What are the chances of the legislature doing this next year? I mean, what keeps running through my mind when you're talking about the shortcomings of this project as you see them is that the legislature approved this, and they've approved it in 2 sessions running, and at the same time, I mean, the lobbying battle that was going on when this was being born was quite extensive. I mean, you had fairly well-financed independent independent water producers saying this is a bad deal, this is what is going to happen, and you have the other side saying this is going to be fine. And the legislature adopted the view of the supporters of the Western Area Water Supply Project. And so what are the prospects for the sort of solution that you advocate?
At this point, there's very little prospect for that. And that's why we are bringing it up. We want to make legislators aware of it. We want to make citizens aware of it. I think that the reason that we are focusing on the cost to Williston residents, that is the primary focus, because we've got all this state taxpayer money at risk, and we don't know if it's actually helping anybody. It could actually be hurting the residents of Williston by reducing their water supply. Their city council was talking about rationing a few months ago, and yet you've got all this water being pumped into the oil industry. This water it simply should be a function of private industry. The state shouldn't be in this business. And yes, we are going headlong into this as a state. There's very little guidance right now that things are going to change, that it's probably going to get worse. The legislature is going to probably double down on this project. But the fact is that if this does not get reined in, this is going to be a too-big-to-fail situation, and this is actually going to be harmful to oil development in western North Dakota.
The Williston water rationing that you mentioned, wasn't this a temporary problem? It was caused by, I think, water turbidity in the Missouri River?
It was. That was one reason. But the bigger reason is that municipal water demand in Williston has gone from just over 2,000 acre-feet to over 4,000. So it's doubled. However, in that same amount of time, from 2010 to 2013, industrial water, which is sold to WAS, has gone from 300 acre-feet to almost 4,000 acre-feet. The huge portion of the demand increase is in this industrial area. The city municipal water supply would have been fine and would not have had a problem with that turbidity in the Missouri River water if this extra demand had not been there straining the infrastructure.
And to what extent are there prospects for the city of Williston to say to the Western Area Water Supply Project, look, pal, you've got to pay more money for our water. You're costing us money.
Well, that is up to the folks up there in Williston who have made these decisions. It's going to take this effort to really get a handle on the numbers. We're actually not saying that we know exactly what they should be paying, but we have a very sneaking suspicion that there is a problem here, that local residents are actually footing the bill here because the WAS project is not paying enough for the water that it's selling. It should be a huge profit center for Williston. Local residents shouldn't have to pay to increase their capacity for water. It should be from this WAS program if it is such a good deal for them.
Well, I'm just thinking about the figures you quoted earlier. You said that the city of Williston is selling for $3 1,000 gallons, and the WAS is selling it for 20.
Yeah, and that's after delivery, and that's once WAS gets it to the point of sale.
Okay.
So
we're speaking to Dustin Gawrylow. He's the director of the North Dakota Watchdog Network. He has a beef with what he calls Republican Party socialism, which is the Western Area Water Supply System. It is a project to supply water to rural communities and the oil industry in western North Dakota, and Mr. Gawrylow's beef is that it's supplying water primarily to the oil industry. Thanks for being here, Gus.
Sure thing, Dale.
This weekend only, get big savings at Conlon's. Take 29% off store-wide. Then get another 5% off purchases over $4.99. Plus, 1-year interest-free financing. Don't miss these huge discounts on all recliners, living room, dining room, bedroom sets, and more. Plus, get 40% off all outdoor furniture. It's this weekend only. Bring your truck or trailer for huge discounts at Conlon's or go to conlons.com.
Conlon's on Broadway, located 7 blocks east of St. Alexis.
The K-Fire Cafe.
Hey, I got a question, Cadillac guy.
That is Schwann Cadillac, if you're going to properly pronounce that.
I drive one myself occasionally.
Then you know the quality.
I've been thinking, though, wonder where the biggest concentration Cadillacs are in the United States. This morning I was in my delivery routes, like I seen 3, 4 in a row, and I was going, what?
People are hearing it on the K-Fire Cafe and saying, I've got to have a CTS.
Weekday afternoons from 3 to 5 here on K-Fire. You're listening.